No, stop! Don't touch him!
The thick snow fell in absolute silence, each flake carrying secrets from the dark sky above. In this frozen wasteland where no living thing should survive, something moved beneath the white blanket. Something that would change everything. A small bundle of fur trembled in the ice, not from cold, but from fear. This wasn't just any rabbit. This creature held within its tiny body the most dangerous secret in the universe. A secret that powerful beings would kill for. A secret that could destroy worlds. But in this moment of terror, gentle hands reached down, green hands, alien hands belonging to a 6-year-old girl whose innocence would soon shatter like ice under a hammer. "Don't worry, little one," she whispered in a voice like silver bells. "I'll protect you." Behind her, a man's eyes glowed with deadly intent. He knew what that rabbit really was. He knew the horror it could unleash. And he knew that sometimes, to save the world, you must crush the very thing you love most. The snow continued to fall, covering their footprints. But some secrets refused to stay buried. The alarm shrieked through the bitter night air. Red lights flashed across the white landscape, turning snow into pools of blood. Security drones buzzed overhead, their searchlights cutting through darkness. "Subject Omega-7 has breached containment." The voice crackled through Victor Kane's radio. "Code Black situation!" Victor cursed under his breath. 43 years old, 20 spent guarding this facility, and tonight everything was falling apart. His hands gripped the tracking device as he trudged through knee-deep snow, following a heat signature that meant either salvation or damnation. "Kane, report position," came Director Stone's voice through the communicator. Tonight, there was something new in Stone's voice. Fear. "2 clicks northeast," Victor replied, his breath forming ice crystals. "Trails still fresh." Moving fast. These weren't ordinary rabbits. The energy extraction process had changed them, evolved them in ways that made Victor's skin crawl. They understood more than they let on, especially this one. Subject Omega-7 was different. While others cowered in heated enclosures, munching alien fruit that made their bodies produce precious energy crystals, Omega-7 watched, learned, waited. Victor's tracker beeped faster. He was close. Through swirling snow, a shape materialized, small, hunched over something in the drifts. Victor's hand moved to his plasma weapon, but then he saw who it was. Zira. The little green alien girl knelt in snow, her bioluminescent skin glowing emerald in darkness. Her large violet eyes looked up at Victor with pure joy. "Uncle Victor," she called in her musical voice. "Look what I found." Victor's blood turned to ice. There, cradled in Zira's arms, was Subject Omega-7. The rabbit's red eyes met Victor's gaze, and he could swear the creature was smiling. "Zira," Victor said slowly, hand on his weapon. "Put the animal down, very carefully." "But he's cold and scared," Zira protested, pulling the rabbit closer. "Can't we take him inside where it's warm?" Victor stepped closer. The rabbit's ears twitched. Too sharp, too alert, the way it looked at him, as if it could see right through his soul. "That's not a pet, sweetheart. That's a very dangerous creature." Zira's face scrunched in confusion. "Dangerous? But he's so soft. How can something so small be dangerous?" If only she knew what these creatures really were. "Kane, we're reading 2 life forms. Confirm the package is secure," crackled the radio. "Package. That's what they called the rabbits now." "The package is complicated," Victor replied. "We have a civilian situation." Zira giggled. "Package, is that his name?" She nuzzled the creature's fur, and Victor noticed something that made his stomach drop. The rabbit's fur was changing color, shifting from brown to the same bioluminescent green as Zira's skin. Zira, listen carefully, Victor said, fighting to keep his voice calm. Put the rabbit down and step away. Right now. Why? We're just playing. The rabbit turned toward Victor, and there was no mistaking the intelligence in those crimson eyes. It knew exactly what it was doing. Uncle Victor looks scared, Zira observed. Are you scared of rabbits? I'm scared of a lot of things, kid. And smart people listen when I'm scared. But Zira was 6 years old, and 6-year-olds don't always listen. She stood up, still clutching the rabbit, and started walking toward the facility's main entrance. Come on, package, she cooed. Let's get you something to eat. Victor's blood ran cold. If that rabbit got near the laboratory... Zira, stop! Victor lunged forward, but the child was surprisingly quick. She darted between emergency vehicles, her green skin blending into shadows. Security teams converged, but they were too late. Zira had vanished into the facility's corridors, carrying the one creature that could unravel everything. As Victor ran after them, he couldn't shake one feeling. This wasn't an escape at all. This was exactly what the rabbit had planned. Dr. Eleanor Blackwood looked up from her microscope as the facility's emergency lights painted her laboratory in hellish red. At 71 years old, she had seen enough crises to know the difference between a minor containment breach and the end of the world. Tonight felt like the latter. Her arthritic hands moved across the holographic displays with practiced precision, pulling up the tracking data for all active subjects. Subject Omega-7's signal had vanished from the containment sector 20 minutes ago, and now the whole facility was in lockdown. But Eleanor knew something the others didn't. She had been monitoring Omega-7's neural patterns for months, watching as its brain activity evolved beyond anything they had thought possible. The rabbit wasn't just intelligent. It was planning something. A soft chime from the laboratory door interrupted her thoughts. Eleanor frowned. The security protocols should have locked down all non-essential access. Who could possibly... Grandma Eleanor, are you in there? Eleanor's heart stopped. Zira's voice, bright and cheerful as always, came through the sealed door. But there was something else. A sound that made Eleanor's skin crawl. Soft scratching, like tiny claws against metal. Just a moment, dear, Eleanor called out, her fingers dancing across the emergency lockdown controls. But the system was already compromised. Someone, or something, had overridden the security protocols. The door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing Zira's glowing green form. And there, nestled in her arms like the most innocent thing in the world, was Subject Omega-7. Look what I found in the snow, Zira announced proudly. Uncle Victor said he was dangerous, but I think he's just hungry. Do you have any of those special fruits? Eleanor's mouth went dry. The special fruits, bioengineered alien produce that served as both nutrition and catalyst for the energy extraction process. If Omega-7 consumed one outside of the controlled environment... Zira, sweetheart, Eleanor said slowly, backing away from her workstation. Where exactly did you find our little friend here? He was all alone in the snow, shivering. He looked so sad. Zira's large violet eyes brimmed with sympathy. I couldn't just leave him there to freeze. The rabbit's head turned toward Eleanor, and she felt her breath catch. Those eyes. They weren't the eyes of an animal. They held knowledge, purpose, and something that looked disturbingly like amusement. Grandma Eleanor, why does everyone think he's dangerous? Zira asked, stroking the rabbit's fur. He's just a little bunny. Eleanor watched in fascination and horror as the rabbit's fur continued its color change. Now it matched Zira's skin tone perfectly, as if it were trying to camouflage itself against her. But that wasn't possible. The mimicry capabilities weren't supposed to extend to... A soft beeping from her workstation made Eleanor's blood freeze. The genetic scanner was picking up anomalous readings, not from the rabbit, from Zira. "Dear one," Eleanor said, fighting to keep her voice steady, "have you been feeling different lately? Any strange dreams, perhaps?" Zira tilted her head, considering. "I have been having the most wonderful dreams about faraway places. Places with crystal cities and silver oceans. Places where creatures like Package come from." Package. Eleanor almost smiled at the innocence of it. If only the child knew that her package was a genetically modified organism designed to process exotic matter from beyond their solar system. If only she knew that the energy crystals they harvested were actually... "Grandma Eleanor, you look pale. Are you feeling all right?" Eleanor realized she had been staring. The implications of what she was seeing were too enormous to process. The rabbit's presence was affecting Zira on a cellular level, awakening dormant genetic sequences that should have remained buried forever. "I'm fine, dear. Just tired." Eleanor moved slowly toward her emergency communication panel. She needed to contact Director Stone immediately. But as her hand reached for the controls, something impossible happened. The rabbit spoke. Not in words, but directly into Eleanor's mind. A voice like whispers in the void, ancient and patient and utterly alien. The child is the key. She always was. You knew this day would come. Eleanor stumbled backward, her hand clutching her chest. That's impossible. The neural interfaces aren't developed enough for... We have been waiting so long for her to find us. Your experiments merely accelerated the inevitable." Zira looked between Eleanor and the rabbit, confusion clouding her young features. "Grandma Eleanor, you look frightened. Is something wrong?" "Everything," Eleanor thought. "Everything is wrong. The energy extraction experiments, the genetic modifications, the careful breeding programs. None of it had been their idea. They had been guided, manipulated, used." The rabbit's mental voice continued, cold as the winter wind outside. "The harvest begins tonight. 20 years of preparation, and finally the child is ready." "Ready for what?" Eleanor whispered, though she already suspected the answer. The laboratory door hissed open again, and Victor Kane stepped inside, his face grim. "Dr. Blackwood, we need to evacuate immediately. The other subjects are showing signs of spontaneous evolution. The entire facility is compromised." Eleanor looked at Zira, still innocent and trusting, holding what might be the most dangerous creature in the galaxy. "Victor, there's something you need to know about the experiments. Something we've all been blind to. It can wait. Right now, we need to." Victor's words died as he saw the rabbit looking directly at him. The creature's eyes had changed again. Now they glowed with the same eerie light as the emergency beacons outside. And then, with perfect clarity, they all heard it. Not through their ears, but resonating in their minds like a tuning fork, struck against reality itself. The sleepers awaken. The harvest moon rises, and the child will open the door. Eleanor grabbed Zira's arm, but it was too late. The rabbit had already begun to change, its small form expanding and shifting as alien DNA rewrote itself in real time. The real nightmare was just beginning. Dr. Mira Ashworth had always prided herself on her ability to remain calm under pressure. 15 years as a xenobiologist, 10 of them spent at Harmony Collective's most classified facilities, had taught her that panic was the enemy of rational thought. But as she stood in her medical bay, watching the security feeds from Dr. Blackwood's laboratory, rational thought seemed like a luxury she could no longer afford. The creature that had been Subject Omega 7 was no longer recognizable as a rabbit. Its form rippled and shifted like liquid mercury, expanding and contracting as if it couldn't decide what it wanted to become. And through it all, little Zira stood transfixed, her violet eyes reflecting the alien glow that now emanated from the thing in her arms. "Jesus Christ," whispered Dr. Marcus Wells, Mira's research partner. At 35, Marcus had seen his share of genetic anomalies, but nothing like this. "Mira, are you seeing this?" "Unfortunately, yes." Mira's fingers flew across her diagnostic equipment, analyzing the bio readings from the laboratory. The creature's cellular structure is completely rewriting itself. It's like watching evolution in fast forward. Evolution or devolution? Mira paused, studying the data streams. The energy readings coming from the transformed creature were off the charts, but they weren't random. There was a pattern, a purpose to the changes. "Neither," she said softly. "It's revealing its true form." Marcus looked at her sharply. "What do you mean?" Mira pulled up a classified file on her secondary screen, data that she wasn't supposed to have, information she'd gathered through months of careful observation and covert testing. "Marcus, what if I told you that the rabbits we've been experimenting on aren't from Earth?" "I'd say you've been working too many double shifts." "Look at this." Mira highlighted sections of genetic code on her display. "These DNA sequences, they don't match any terrestrial organism. Not even close. They're closer to the xenobotanical samples we've been studying from the Kepler system. Marcus leaned closer, his skepticism warring with growing unease. "That's impossible. The rabbits were sourced from standard Earth stock. I've seen the procurement records." "The procurement records show what someone wanted us to see." Mira's voice dropped to a whisper. "Marcus, I think we've been conducting experiments on prisoners." "Prisoners?" "Alien beings, shapeshifters, trapped in forms that we would find non-threatening. We've been torturing sentient creatures for 20 years, and they've been waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves." On the security feed, they watched as Eleanor Blackwood backed away from the transforming creature. Zira, still innocent and unaware, reached out to touch its shifting surface. "Don't let her touch it," Mira shouted into her communicator, but she knew it was too late. The communication systems were compromised, and even if they weren't, what could she say? How could she explain that the sweet little girl they all adored might be the catalyst for humanity's destruction? Marcus grabbed her arm. "Mira, if what you're saying is true, then Zira isn't just an alien child living among humans," Mira finished. "She's the key they've been waiting for." Her biosignature matches the exotic energy patterns we've been harvesting. She's one of them. The implications crashed over them like a tidal wave. The Harmony Collective hadn't just been conducting energy experiments. They'd been holding alien royalty hostage. And tonight, the rescue mission had finally begun. Mira's workstation chimed with an incoming priority message from Director Stone. She opened it with trembling fingers. All personnel, this is a code red evacuation order. Unknown biological threat has compromised Laboratory Sector 7. Proceed to emergency exits immediately. This is not a drill. We have to help them, Marcus said, moving toward the door. Help who? Mira caught his arm. The humans who've been unknowingly participating in an interstellar war crime, or the aliens who are about to take their revenge. Before Marcus could answer, the lights went out. Emergency power kicked in a moment later, bathing everything in blood-red light. But in that instant of absolute darkness, Mira heard something that made her soul freeze. Singing. A voice like crystalline bells, hauntingly beautiful and utterly inhuman. It was coming from the laboratory where Zira and the creature waited, and it was getting louder. The harvest song, Mira whispered, pieces of a terrible puzzle falling into place. I've heard recordings of it in the xenobotanical samples. It's a signal, a call to... The facility shuddered as something massive impacted the outer walls. Then another impact, and another. Through the small windows of the medical bay, Mira caught a glimpse of the winter sky. What she saw there would haunt her for the rest of her life, however long that might be. Ships, dozens of them, descending through the snow clouds like angular stars. Their hulls gleamed with the same bioluminescent green as Zyra's skin, and they moved with a grace that spoke of technology far beyond human understanding. The cavalry has arrived, Marcus said, his voice hollow with defeat. Mira watched the ships take positions around the facility, effectively cutting off all escape routes. No, Marcus. The parents have come to collect their children, and somewhere in the depths of the facility, a 6-year-old girl continued to sing, her innocent voice serving as a beacon for forces that humanity was not prepared to face. The real question wasn't whether they would survive the night. The question was whether humanity deserved to. Director Marcus Stone stood in his command center watching 20 years of careful planning disintegrate before his eyes. The holographic displays showed a facility in complete chaos. Security teams running in circles, scientists barricading themselves in their laboratories, and above it all, those impossible ships hovering like death itself. At 58, Stone had survived 3 alien contact events, 2 corporate wars, and countless political machinations. But nothing had prepared him for this moment, when the carefully constructed lies that held his world together came crashing down. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission," reported Lieutenant Sarah Chen, her usually steady voice cracking with strain. It's not coming through our communication systems." Stone knew what that meant. Direct neural interface. The same technology they'd been trying to reverse engineer from the rabbit specimens. The aliens weren't just technologically superior, they were decades ahead in understanding how to manipulate consciousness itself. "Put it through," Stone commanded, though he suspected he didn't have a choice in the matter. The voice that filled the command center was neither male nor female, neither young nor old. It was the sound of starlight-given voice, beautiful and terrible in equal measure. "Director Stone, we need to talk." Stone's staff looked at him with barely concealed panic. These were career military personnel trained for every conceivable crisis scenario. None of them had ever imagined that the crisis would speak directly into their minds. "I'm listening," Stone said aloud, knowing that thought alone would be sufficient. 23 years ago, you were a junior researcher on Project Harmony. Do you remember what you were told about its purpose?" Stone did remember, though he'd tried not to think about it for years. Sustainable energy research, developing clean alternatives to fossil fuels. A noble lie. The truth is somewhat more complex. The holographic displays around the command center flickered, showing images that Stone recognized but had hoped never to see again. A crashed ship in the Arctic wilderness. Bodies, not human bodies, being loaded into refrigerated trucks. Scientists in hazmat suits examining technology that defied all known physics. You found our survey vessel in what you call the Yukon Territory. Aboard that ship were biological samples from our homeworld, including several small creatures we use for energy storage. What you might call living batteries. The rabbits, Stone whispered. The rabbits, yes, but also something infinitely more precious. A child, a member of our royal bloodline, barely old enough to take her first steps. Stone felt the blood drain from his face. Zira. Princess Zirathel of the Kepler Collective. She was injured in the crash, her memory damaged, her age regression triggered by trauma. Your scientists found her and made assumptions. Stone had been there when they brought Zira in from the crash site. A tiny green child, unconscious and barely breathing. The xenobiology team had identified her as a previously unknown alien species, potentially dangerous but apparently harmless. The decision had been made to study her, to learn from her, to keep her as a ward of the collective. They'd raised her like a beloved pet. For 23 years, we searched for her. For 23 years, we followed the faintest traces of her biosignature across half the galaxy. And when we finally found her, you found us torturing your people, Stone finished, the full horror of the situation finally sinking in. The energy extraction experiments. We've been, God help us. Your people have a saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. You meant no harm, but harm was done nonetheless. The alien ships outside began to move, taking new positions around the facility. Stone could see weapon ports opening, energy signatures building to critical levels. We came tonight not for conquest, but for rescue. We came to retrieve our princess and our imprisoned people. We did not come for war. But Stone sensed the unspoken condition. But we cannot allow the abuse to continue, and we cannot allow your species to retain the technology you've developed from our biosamples. The power you've learned to harness, it was never meant for your kind. Stone thought about the energy crystals, the clean power that could light entire cities, the medical breakthroughs that had saved millions of lives, all of it built on what was essentially alien slave labor. What do you want from us? Nothing. Everything. We want our people back. We want the research destroyed. We want assurance that this will never happen again. And if we refuse, the temperature in the command center dropped 10 degrees in as many seconds. Frost began forming on the electronic equipment, and the lights dimmed to a hellish amber glow. Then we will take them anyway. And your facility, your personnel, your entire organization will serve as an example to any others who might consider similar experiments. Stone looked around at his staff. Good people, dedicated professionals who had genuinely believed they were making the world a better place. They didn't deserve to die for the sins of their predecessors. But then he thought about Zira, sweet, innocent Zira, who they'd kept as a curiosity for over 2 decades while her people searched frantically for her, who they'd subjected to routine medical examinations that were actually intelligence-gathering sessions, who they'd loved in the same way a child might love a particularly interesting insect. Director, Lieutenant Chen whispered urgently, security teams are reporting strange behavior from the remaining rabbit subjects. They're changing. All of them. Stone closed his eyes. The rescue mission wasn't just for Zira, it was for all of them. Every creature they'd imprisoned, every being they'd reduced to a research subject, every life they'd callously exploited in the name of scientific progress. Choose quickly, Director Stone. Our patience, like your time, is running short. Stone opened the facility's communication channel to all personnel. His voice, when he spoke, carried the weight of absolute finality. All staff, this is Director Stone. Begin immediate evacuation procedures, abandon all research materials, and head to designated safe zones. This is a complete facility shutdown. Repeat, complete facility shutdown. He paused, looking one last time at the empire he'd helped build. And may God forgive us all for what we've done. Outside, the alien ships began their final approach. Victor Kane had faced down armed insurgents, rogue AI systems, and genetically modified war beasts. But nothing in his 43 years of existence had prepared him for the sight of a 6-year-old girl calmly petting a creature that was rewriting the laws of biology in real time. The thing that had been Subject Omega-7 now stood nearly 3 feet tall, its form stabilizing into something that looked like a cross between a rabbit and a praying mantis made of living light. Crystalline formations grew along its spine, pulsing with the same bioluminescent energy as Zira's skin. Zira, Victor said carefully, his hand resting on his weapon, but not drawing it. I need you to step away from package. Very slowly. The little alien girl looked up at him with those impossibly large violet eyes, and Victor felt his heart break a little. Even now, surrounded by impossibility and terror, she radiated the kind of pure innocence that made him want to protect her from everything dark in the universe. Uncle Victor, Package is trying to tell me something, but I don't understand, Zira said, her voice carrying a note of frustration. He keeps showing me pictures in my head, but they don't make sense. Dr. Eleanor Blackwood stepped forward, her scientific curiosity warring with her survival instincts. What kind of pictures, dear one? Zira's brow furrowed in concentration. Silver cities floating in pink skies, oceans made of liquid crystal, and people who look like me, but older. They're crying, Uncle Victor. Why are they crying? Victor exchanged glances with Eleanor. The child was receiving memories, not just from the creature, but from an entire civilization. The implications were staggering. Zira, Eleanor said gently, those people in the pictures, do any of them look familiar? One of them looks like me, but she's a grown-up, Zira replied. She's wearing a pretty crown made of starlight, and she keeps saying a name over and over again. Zira something. Zirathel? Do you know what that means? Eleanor's face went white. Oh, sweet child, it means precious flame in the old tongue of the Kepler Collective. How do you know that? Victor demanded. Because I've been studying their language for 20 years, Eleanor admitted. Every piece of biological matter we've examined contained trace amounts of their cultural matrix, genetic memories passed down through generations. I've been decoding it in secret. The facility shuddered again as more alien ships took position outside. Through the laboratory's reinforced windows, Victor could see beings of pure light moving among the security teams. They didn't appear to be harming anyone, but the humans were collapsing unconscious wherever the aliens touched them. Dr. Blackwood, Victor said urgently, if you know something about what's happening here, now would be a really good time to share. Eleanor looked at Zira, who was now humming along with a song that seemed to come from the creature beside her. The child isn't just any alien, Victor. She's royalty, possibly their heir apparent, and we've been keeping her prisoner for over 2 decades. Prisoner? Victor felt the world tilt on its axis. Eleanor, Zira isn't a prisoner. She's family. We love her. Love? Eleanor's laugh was bitter. Yes, we love our pet. We love our research subject. We love the fascinating alien child who provides us with such interesting data. But have we ever once asked her what she wants? Have we ever given her a choice about staying here? Victor wanted to argue, but the words died in his throat. In all the years he'd known Zira, in all the times he'd played with her and taught her and watched her grow, he'd never once considered that she might want to leave. She was part of the facility, part of their lives, as permanent and unquestioned as the walls themselves. The creature, he couldn't think of it as package anymore, turned its attention to him. When their eyes met, Victor felt a rush of alien thoughts flood his mind. She doesn't remember home because the trauma suppressed her memories. But we remember her. We remember the princess who was supposed to unite our worlds in peace. Unite worlds, Victor spoke aloud, though he knew the creature would hear his thoughts. The Harmony Collective. Your organization chose that name for a reason, though you may have forgotten why. The original contact protocols called for peaceful integration, shared technology, mutual benefit for both species. Eleanor nodded grimly. The crashed ship in the Yukon wasn't a survey vessel. It was a diplomatic mission. They were coming to establish formal relations with Earth. But the ship crashed, Victor said, understanding beginning to dawn. Shot down by your military, though they claimed it was an accident. Princess Zirathel was aboard as a symbol of our peaceful intentions, a child who would grow up bridging both worlds. Victor looked at Zira, who was now glowing with the same ethereal light as the creature. Instead, we turned her into a lab rat. You turned her into a beloved pet, which is perhaps even worse. The facility's intercom crackled to life with Director Stone's evacuation order. But Victor found he couldn't move. The weight of 20 years of good intentions crushing innocent lives held him frozen in place. What happens now? He asked. The creature's crystalline formations pulsed brighter. Now the princess chooses. She can come home with us, reclaim her birthright, and perhaps one day forgive your species for its mistakes. Or she can stay here with the humans who raised her, and we will leave this sector of space forever. But the choice must be hers, freely given. Zira looked up at Victor with those trusting violet eyes. Uncle Victor, the pretty light rabbit wants to know if I want to go see the crystal cities. Should I? Victor's throat felt like sandpaper. The child he'd helped raise, the little girl who called him uncle and hugged his legs when she was scared, was being offered the chance to reclaim her true heritage. And all he could think about was how much he would miss her. I don't know, sweetheart. What do you want to do? For the first time in her life, 6-year-old Princess Zirathel of the Kepler Collective was being asked to make her own choice. The universe held its breath, waiting for her answer. Dr. Mira Ashworth watched through the security feed as the moment that would define 2 civilizations played out in a sterile laboratory. Her hands trembled as she adjusted the recording parameters, knowing that whatever happened next would be studied by historians for centuries to come, assuming there were any historians left to study it. "She's just a child," Marcus whispered beside her. "How can they put this kind of responsibility on a 6-year-old?" Mira had been asking herself the same question, but she was beginning to understand the alien perspective. In their culture, consciousness and wisdom weren't tied to physical age the way they were for humans. Zira might look like a child, but she was genetically programmed to carry the accumulated wisdom of countless generations. The problem was, those genetic memories had been suppressed by trauma and human intervention for over 20 years. On the screen, they watched Zira consider the question with the serious expression she always wore when facing difficult decisions. The creature beside her pulsed with patient light, while Victor Kane stood frozen in an agony of conflicted love. "I like it here," Zira said finally, her musical voice carrying clearly through the audio pickup. "You're my family, Uncle Victor and Grandma Eleanor and Dr. Mira and everyone. I don't want to leave my family." Mira felt tears she didn't expect prick her eyes. Even now, faced with the revelation of her true nature, Zira's first concern was for the humans who had unknowingly imprisoned her. But the creature, she was beginning to think of it as an ambassador rather than a test subject, wasn't finished. "Princess, you have another family, one that has been searching for you among the stars for 23 years. One that grieves for you every day." Zira's glow flickered with uncertainty. "But I don't remember them. Would you like to?" "Mira, they can't," Marcus breathed. "If they restore her memories—" "She'll remember everything," Mira finished. "Every medical examination, every biological sample, every time we treated her like a fascinating specimen instead of a person." The weight of their collective guilt settled over the room like a shroud. They had genuinely loved Zira, but love without understanding, love without respect for autonomy, love that caged rather than freed. Was that really love at all? On screen, Eleanor Blackwood knelt beside Zira, her aged face creased with pain. "Sweet one, before you decide, there's something you need to know. Something about why you're really here." "Eleanor, don't," Victor warned. "She deserves the truth," Eleanor said firmly. "Zira, you weren't always 6 years old. When we found you, you were badly hurt. Your people, they have the ability to heal by reverting to an earlier stage of development. You did that to save your own life, your own." Zira's violet eyes widened. "I was bigger before. You were 17 years old. A beautiful young woman on a diplomatic mission to make peace between our worlds." Eleanor's voice broke slightly. "But the trauma was so severe that your mind retreated to protect itself. We've been caring for a princess who forgot she was a princess." The creature's crystalline formations pulsed with what looked like approval. "The old healer speaks truth. Would you see yourself as you truly are, Princess Zirathel?" Zira looked around the laboratory, at Victor with his protective stance, at Eleanor with her guilty love, at the sterile walls that had been her entire world for as long as she could remember. "If I remember being older," she asked with the devastating logic of childhood, "will I still love you?" Victor's composure finally cracked. "Oh, sweetheart. The question isn't whether you'll still love us. The question is whether we deserve to be loved." "The memories will return gradually," the creature assured her. "But the choice of forgiveness, that will always be yours." Zira nodded solemnly. "Okay, I want to remember." The creature extended what might have been a limb, touching Zira's forehead with gossamer gentleness. Light flowed between them, and suddenly the little girl's posture changed. Her spine straightened with regal bearing, even as her physical form remained that of a child. When she opened her eyes, they held depths of understanding that no 6-year-old should possess. "I remember the ship," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that hadn't been there before. "I remember the mission. I remember the weapons fire." Victor stepped forward instinctively. "Zira, are you all right?" She looked at him with eyes that now held 23 years of lost experiences, but when she smiled, it was the same innocent expression he'd grown to love. "I remember being afraid when I woke up here. And I remember you holding my hand in the medical bay until I fell asleep." Her smile wavered. "I also remember the genetic samples you took, the energy extraction experiments you performed on my people." The silence stretched between them like a chasm. "I remember everything," Zira continued, her child's voice carrying the weight of an adult's comprehension. "The love and the exploitation, the kindness and the cruelty, the family that cherished me, and the prison that confined me. What is your choice, Princess?" Zira looked at each of them in turn, Victor, Eleanor, and through the security cameras, Mira and Marcus in their monitoring station. Then she turned to the alien ambassador. "I choose forgiveness," she said simply, "for all of us. My people for their anger, my human family for their ignorance, and myself for taking so long to remember who I was meant to be." The facility shuddered as the alien ships repositioned themselves, but this time the movement felt less like preparation for attack and more like departure. "Forgiveness is a gift, Princess, but justice still requires action." "I know." Zira walked to the laboratory's main console, her small hands dancing across controls that would have challenged most trained scientists. "The experiments end tonight. The energy extraction protocols will be destroyed. The imprisoned ones will be freed. Ones will be Zira," Victor said carefully. "What about the people who depend on that energy? The cities we power, the hospitals we supply." She paused in her work, looking at him with compassion that was both heartbreaking and humbling. "Uncle Victor, would you power your cities with human suffering if you could?" "Of course not, but then you understand why we cannot allow our suffering to continue, even if the alternative is difficult." Eleanor stepped forward. "Child, there might be another way. If your people would be willing to work with us voluntarily, to share their knowledge in exchange for true partnership." "That decision," the creature interjected, "belongs to the collective council." Princess Zirathel's forgiveness opens the possibility for future negotiations. But first, all debts must be settled. The laboratory filled with a sound like crystal chimes as more alien ambassadors materialized through the walls, beings of pure light and geometric beauty, each one carrying themselves with the dignity of emissaries from a wounded but noble civilization. "The rescue fleet has arrived," Zira announced unnecessarily. "My people are here to take the imprisoned ones home." "And you?" Victor asked, though he already knew the answer. Zira walked over to him and took his large hand in her small green ones. "I have to go, Uncle Victor. I have responsibilities to my people that I've neglected for 23 years. But..." She stood on her tiptoes and hugged him with all the fierce affection of a 6-year-old saying goodbye to a beloved parent. "I'll come back to visit when both our peoples are ready for real friendship, when we can meet as equals instead of captors and prisoners." The alien ambassadors began to move through the facility, collecting their transformed kin. The creatures that had been research subjects resumed their true forms, not the harmless rabbits the humans had seen, but graceful beings of light and crystal who regarded their former captors with expressions of profound sadness rather than hatred. Director Stone's voice crackled through the intercom one final time. All personnel, evacuation is complete. Facility lockdown in 60 seconds. Go, Zira told Victor and Eleanor. Get to safety. I'll make sure everyone gets out. We're not leaving you, Victor said stubbornly. Zira's laugh was pure music, the same joyful sound they'd heard countless times echoing through the facility corridors. Silly Uncle Victor. You're not leaving me. You're letting me go home. The difference, Victor realized, was everything. The evacuation site was chaos. 300 facility personnel huddled in emergency shelters 5 miles from the main complex, watching through reinforced windows as their life's work disappeared in pillars of ethereal fire. Director Stone stood apart from the others, his weathered face illuminated by the alien lights dancing across the winter sky. Each explosion represented another laboratory being cleansed, another research station being reduced to harmless ash. 20 years of scientific advancement vanishing in a matter of hours. Dr. Mira Ashworth approached him, her medical bag slung over her shoulder and her conscience heavy with guilt. Sir, the casualty reports are in. 0 fatalities, minimal injuries. Whatever they're doing to the facility, they're being careful to preserve human life. Stone nodded without taking his eyes off the light show. Merciful conquerors. How civilized of them. Are they conquerors? Asked Eleanor Blackwood, limping up to join them with Victor Kane's support. The elderly scientist looked every one of her 71 years, as if the weight of revelation had finally caught up with her bones. Or are they simply parents retrieving their stolen children? Victor's jaw clenched. Does the motivation matter? We're finished either way. The Harmony Collective is done. Good, Eleanor said with surprising firmness. It should be done. What we did, what we convinced ourselves was noble research. It was nothing less than institutionalized torture. Marcus Wells stumbled over to their group, his usually neat appearance disheveled from the hasty evacuation. Has anyone been monitoring the global news feeds? The stories breaking everywhere. Alien contact, government cover-ups, secret facilities. The stock market is in free fall. Stone finally turned away from the distant fires. The financial implications are the least of our concerns, Dr. Wells. We're about to face congressional hearings, international tribunals, and criminal charges that will make Nuremberg look like a parking ticket. Sir, Lieutenant Chen interrupted, her portable communication unit crackling with static. We're receiving another transmission. Same source as before. The voice that emerged from the speakers was Zira's, but changed. Deeper now, carrying harmonics that spoke of ancient wisdom contained within a child's form. Director Stone, can you hear me? Stone took the communicator with steady hands. I hear you, Your Highness, a sound that might have been gentle laughter. I'm still just Zira to you, Director Stone. That will never change. Zira, then, we need to talk about what comes next. There will be consequences for what my people have done. Legal ramifications, political fallout. I know. The Collective Council is already in communication with your world leaders. Reparations will be discussed, policies will be changed, new protocols established for interspecies contact. Victor grabbed the communicator. Zira, sweetheart, what about you? Are you going to be okay? Oh, Uncle Victor. Her voice was warm with affection. I'm going to be fine. Better than fine. I'm going home to help my people heal from the trauma of losing me. And then I'm going to spend the rest of my very long life making sure that what happened here never happens again anywhere in the galaxy. Eleanor leaned toward the speaker. Child, if there's anything we can do to help. Actually, Grandma Eleanor, there is. The old scientist's face lit up with hope. Name it. I want you to write down everything you remember about me. Every conversation we had, every game we played, every story you told me at bedtime. The human family that raised me. I want my children to know about them. I want them to understand that even in the darkest circumstances, love can flourish. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. I'll start tonight. And Uncle Victor? Yes, sweetheart? Keep being the kind of man who protects children, even when he doesn't understand what he's protecting them from. The galaxy needs more people like you. Victor's voice was rough with emotion. Will we ever see you again? Sooner than you think. The Collective Council has decided to establish a permanent embassy on Earth. Someone will need to serve as ambassador to help both our peoples learn to trust again. Stone felt a glimmer of something that might have been hope. And you think you might be interested in that position? I think I'm uniquely qualified for it. After all, I've spent 23 years learning how to be human. Now I need to learn how to be myself again. The communication crackled with interference as the alien ships began their final departure sequence. Through the static, they could hear Zira's voice one more time. Tell Dr. Ashworth that her research on genetic memory was correct. My people do carry our history in our cells. But what she didn't realize is that we also carry our capacity for forgiveness. Both traits will serve us well in the years to come. The ships rose into the night sky like ascending prayers, their lights fading to pinpricks among the stars. The facility behind them was dark now, cleansed of its sins but not destroyed, left as a monument to the complex possibilities of first contact. Stone looked around at his people, his former people, he supposed. They would face investigations, trials, and the judgment of history. Their careers were over, their reputations ruined, their life's work revealed as a monument to well-intentioned evil. But they were alive. And perhaps more importantly, they had been forgiven by someone who had every right to condemn them. Director Stone, Lieutenant Chen said quietly, what are your orders? Stone considered the question. After 20 years of commanding one of the most classified operations in human history, after decades of making decisions that affected the fate of 2 species, he found himself at a loss. I honestly don't know, Lieutenant. I suppose we wait for the lawyers and hope that when they write the history books, they remember that we loved her. Whatever else we did wrong, we loved her. Above them, the last alien ship vanished into the vastness of space, carrying with it a princess who had learned to forgive and a promise that the future might hold redemption after all. The snow continued to fall, covering their footprints and washing the world clean for whatever came next. Epilogue. 5 years later, the Terran Kepler embassy stood like a crystalline tree in the heart of Geneva, its bioluminescent walls shifting between alien geometries and familiar human architecture. Tourist groups gathered daily to marvel at the building that seemed to exist in 2 dimensions simultaneously, a perfect metaphor for the delicate relationship between 2 civilizations learning to trust each other. Ambassador Zira Thel, now physically 17 years old again, her natural aging process restored, stood at the panoramic windows of her office, watching children from both species play together in the embassy gardens. Human youngsters chased beings of living light through carefully cultivated alien flora, their laughter echoing off walls that had been grown rather than built. A soft chime announced a visitor. Zira turned to see Victor Kane enter, his hair grayer now, but his eyes still carrying the same protective warmth she remembered from childhood. "Uncle Victor," she said, her smile radiant. "You're early for our lunch appointment." Victor grinned, pulling a familiar stuffed animal from behind his back. "I brought an old friend." It was the Earth Rabbit plush toy he'd given her during her first week at the facility, a cruel irony that had become a cherished memory. Zira hugged it to her chest, marveling at how something that had once represented her imprisonment now symbolized the love that had sustained her through the darkest years. "How's Eleanor?" she asked, settling into one of the embassy's adaptive chairs that molded themselves to accommodate any species' physiology. "Grandmother Eleanor is doing well. Her memoirs are being published next month, Raising a Princess, a Xenobiologist's Confessions. The advance reviews are calling it the most important first contact document ever written." Zira laughed. "I can't wait to read her perspective on my terrible twos." "You didn't have terrible twos. You had terrible sixes." "I was processing the trauma of losing my entire civilization, Uncle Victor. I think I'm entitled to a few tantrums." They settled into comfortable conversation as they did every month when Victor made his pilgrimage to Geneva. The war crimes trials had been concluded 2 years ago with surprisingly lenient sentences, the collective council's influence ensuring that the humans involved were treated as ignorant rather than malicious. Victor now ran a wildlife sanctuary in Montana, caring for genuine Earth animals with the same dedication he'd once shown their alien captives. "Zira," he said eventually, "I have something I need to ask you. Something I've been wondering about for 5 years." "Anything. Do you ever regret it? Forgiving us, I mean, when you could have, when your people would have been justified in." Zira reached across the table and took his weathered hand in hers. "Uncle Victor, do you remember the night you found me in the laboratory? When I was crying because I'd had a nightmare about losing my family. You were 8. You dreamed that everyone you loved had disappeared. And you stayed with me until dawn, reading stories and making up silly songs to chase the bad dreams away." Zira's eyes glittered with unshed tears. "How could I ever regret loving someone who loved me that completely? Even knowing what we were really doing. Especially knowing what you were really doing. You could have seen me as nothing more than a research subject. Instead, you saw a frightened child who needed protection. The fact that your protection was imperfect doesn't diminish the love behind it." Victor wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "Your people are lucky to have you as their ambassador." "My people's," Zira corrected gently. "Both of them. I learned something important during those 23 years in your facility. Family isn't just about genetics or species or shared history. Family is about choosing to love someone despite their flaws, choosing to protect them despite the cost, choosing to forgive them despite the hurt." Through the embassy windows, they watched as a group of young Kepler beings taught human children how to sing in harmonics that made the nearby plants glow brighter. The future was taking shape in those moments of innocent collaboration. A future where the mistakes of the past served as stepping stones to something better. The Collective Council is sending another diplomatic mission to the Andromeda sector next month, Zira mentioned casually. They've requested that I develop new first contact protocols based on what we learned here. Victor raised an eyebrow. And what did we learn here? Zira smiled, her expression carrying depths of wisdom earned through pain and tempered by love. We learned that the most dangerous force in the universe isn't hatred or fear or even ignorance. It's love without understanding. Love that seeks to possess rather than liberate. Love that speaks for others rather than listening to their voices. She stood and moved to a wall display showing star charts of the local galactic sector. Dozens of systems were marked with symbols indicating various levels of contact and cooperation, a network of relationships that had grown from the seeds of their painful first encounter. But we also learned, she continued, that when love is combined with humility, with the courage to admit mistakes and the wisdom to make amends, that's when miracles become possible. Victor joined her at the star chart. Any regrets about the path not taken? You could have chosen revenge. Your people would have supported you. Zira touched the display, zooming in on Earth's solar system. Uncle Victor, revenge would have given me satisfaction for a moment. Forgiveness has given me a lifetime of purpose. As if summoned by their conversation, a holographic message indicator began blinking on Zira's desk. She activated it, revealing the image of an elderly Kepler council member whose crystalline features radiated gravitas. Princess Zirathel, we have received first contact signals from a species in the Tau Ceti system. They appear to be requesting diplomatic relations. Will you accept the assignment? Zira glanced at Victor, who nodded encouragingly. I accept, Counselor. When do we depart? The mission launches in 30 days. And Princess, thank you. Your protocols have prevented 3 potential conflicts in the past year alone. The galaxy is a safer place because of the wisdom you gained from your unconventional childhood. After the connection closed, Victor shook his head in amazement. From test subject to galactic diplomat, if that's not proof that something good can come from even the worst circumstances. No, Uncle Victor. Zira's correction was gentle but firm. I didn't become a diplomat despite what happened to me at the facility. I became a diplomat because of what happened to me there. The pain taught me empathy. The imprisonment taught me the value of freedom. The love taught me how powerful forgiveness can be. She walked to her office safe and withdrew a small crystal vial containing what looked like liquid starlight, her first successfully extracted energy sample from 23 years ago, preserved as a reminder of how far they'd all traveled. This represents the worst mistake in human Kepler relations, she said, holding the vial up to catch the afternoon light. But it also represents the first step toward understanding. Without this violation, we might never have learned to respect each other's boundaries. That's a very charitable interpretation of torture, sweetheart. Zira's laugh was pure music, unchanged from the 6-year-old who had once brightened the sterile corridors of Research Facility 7. Uncle Victor, I learned a long time ago that we can choose how to interpret our pain. We can let it make us bitter, or we can let it make us wise. I chose wisdom. She placed the vial back in the safe and locked it away. Besides, the universe has a sense of humor. The species that tried to exploit alien biology for energy has ended up becoming the galaxy's premier advocates for interspecies rights. Poetic justice at its finest. As the afternoon sun began to set over Geneva, casting long shadows across the embassy gardens, Zira and Victor prepared to end their monthly reunion. But before Victor left, he had one final question. Zira, when you go to Tau Ceti, what will you tell them about first contact? What's the most important lesson you've learned? The young ambassador considered this carefully, her violet eyes reflecting the wisdom of someone who had seen the very worst of interspecies relations and chosen to build something better from the rubble. I'll tell them that first contact isn't really about meeting aliens, she said finally. It's about discovering what you're willing to become when faced with the truly foreign. It's about choosing whether fear will drive you to build walls or whether curiosity will inspire you to build bridges. She hugged Victor goodbye, the same fierce embrace she'd given him as a 6-year-old, saying farewell in a sterile laboratory. I'll tell them that the universe is vast and strange and full of beings who think differently, dream differently, love differently than we do. And that difference isn't something to be feared or corrected or exploited. Victor smiled, seeing in her face the perfect blend of the innocent child he'd protected and the wise diplomat she'd become. I'll tell them that difference is something to be celebrated. As Victor walked away through the embassy gardens, past the playing children and the glowing plants and the impossible architecture that somehow felt like home, he carried with him the knowledge that sometimes the greatest disasters can give birth to the most beautiful redemptions. Behind him, Ambassador Zirathel returned to her office to begin planning humanity's next step into the stars, not as conquerors or exploiters, but as students of the vast and wondrous classroom that was the galaxy itself. The snow had long since melted, but the seeds it had nurtured were finally beginning to bloom.